The prophet continued, 3 weeks ago I fell and injured the muscles in my lower back. This episode has reminded me of the reality that things sometimes change quickly in our lives. It also showed on social media a photo of President Nelson and his two counselors, Dallin H. Oaks and Henry B. Eyring, having a conversation. President Nelson went on in this social media post to say, I am still not able to sit in a chair for long periods of time. However, I'm hoping to record my General Conference message and look forward to participating in this marvelous October 2023 General Conference through technology. So again, President Russell M. Nelson will not attend the semi-annual conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in person. He will be watching as most of the members of the church around the world will participate through technology, through the internet, and other forms of technology. It does appear that he will be recording his message to the members of the church, and that will air, of course, probably on Sunday morning, I would suspect, as is the tradition for the president of the church to speak in that Sunday morning general conference session. So again, if you're just joining us, just in the last 5 minutes, President Russell M. Nelson, president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, announced through his social media channels that he will not be attending General Conference in person. He'll participate through technology. He has recorded his message that he will give to the members over the weekend, and that he did suffer a fall that injured the muscles in his lower back, which has made it difficult for him to sit for long periods of time. So we'll continue to follow that as we go along and as we roll into General Conference weekend. Of course, KSL News Radio is your place. We have you covered when it comes to all things General Conference, and some very special programming coming up from all of our colleagues here at KSL News Radio. Stay tuned for more of that here on KSL News Radio.
Inside Sources.
Inside Sources.
America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson.
On Utah's home for elevated conversation.
Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
As we begin the program today, of course, last night was another Republican candidate debate, this time in Simi Valley at the historic Ronald Reagan Library. At times it was chaotic. It may have been a case of the good, the bad, and the ugly. We'll talk about the proportions of how much good, quite small, a lot of bad, and some that was just downright ugly and unwatchable. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
All right, so let's get past the headlines of the debate last night. I do think it was interesting that so many of the candidates in that very rich setting with Air Force One hovering above them, looking out over the Simi Valley there were some great visuals to be sure. The interesting thing to me is I don't know that anyone really captured a Reagan-esque kind of moment. Many were very swift to talk about the former president. Very few acted like the former president. We'll break that down as we go along. We're going to spend some extra time on this. We'll talk about a few of the moments that mattered during the course of the debate. We'll talk about how this does or does not impact what happens next and what moves forward. We'll also talk about how this impacts both the former president, who is currently the front runner in that field, as well as the current president, Joe Biden, how it might impact what he is doing. So let's start with the non-elephant in the room, which, of course, was the absence of the former president. Both Governor Chris Christie and Governor Ron DeSantis were very critical of the former president for not appearing at the debate to defend his record. Here's what they had to say in his absence.
And I want to look at that camera right now and tell you, Donald, I know you're watching. You can't help yourself. I know you're watching, okay? And you're not here tonight. Not because of polls and not because of your indictments. You're not here tonight because you're afraid of being on the stage and defending your record.
Where's Joe Biden? He's completely missing in action from leadership. And you know who else is missing in action? Donald Trump is missing in action. He should be on this stage tonight. He owes it to you to defend his record, where they added $7.8 trillion to the debt. That set the stage for the inflation that we have now.
So that was an interesting 1-2 punch there from former Governor Chris Christie of New Jersey and Ron DeSantis, of course, current governor of Florida, saying, look, it's disrespectful to the voters to not show up, to not defend your record, to not make your case, to think you're either above it or to the side of it or whatever the case may be. And so I thought that was an interesting way very early on for both of those candidates to say the former president not being there, everyone should take note of that and should question that and question if he really should be the front runner if he's not willing to come in and actually participate in the process. I'm one of those who believes the process matters, and debates do matter when they're done properly and when candidates live up to the principles they profess to believe so that it doesn't spiral into what we saw at several moments. I have to admit, I was very disappointed at several moments within the context of the debate where it so unraveled and was so unseemly in terms of pejoratives being tossed back and forth, crosstalk where you couldn't understand anything other than just a gobbledygook of noise. And especially in that setting, just seemed very, very sideways to me. Now, let's get on to some of the issues that they talked about. Let's go back to former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie. He took a question about being pro-life, and he actually did a good job of navigating that wasn't enough, that there had to be more to it, and we actually had to change the way we look at all life.
What you need is a leader who can talk to people and make them understand that if you're pro-life, you have to be pro-life for the entire life, not just the 9 months in the womb. And we talked a lot about fentanyl tonight, and we haven't spoken one moment about treatment. And we need to be providing treatment to cure this as a disease that it is. We start talking like that, they're going to do what I did in the blue state, which was get reelected with 61% of the vote and won 70% of independents and 51% of Latinos because I told them the truth from my heart.
So I think it was a good moment for Chris Christie. I actually think the former governor is much better when he's talking about the issues than when he's talking about the former president. He entered the race saying that was going to be part of his job, was to take on and call out former President Trump. And that's fine. You can be against that. I think that's fairly obvious to everybody. But you do have to pivot into what you're for. And I actually thought this was a good moment for Chris Christie to talk about his view of life, that it is from those that are yet to be born to those that are soon to die, and everybody in between, the dignity of life, including those who are dealing with mental health challenges or being treated for addiction. So I thought that was a good moment for him. Ron DeSantis spoke about his military record, how that would help him in the role of commander-in-chief, and emphasized how long America has gone without having someone in the White House with military service.
I was just at the 9/11 memorial with the families. My wife and I were invited. It's very touching to be there, and it affected my life because I ended up joining the military as a result of that. Had a lot of opportunities to make money, but I wanted to serve, and I'll never forget coming back on the plane from Iraq, landing in Coronado, California, North Island, and feeling that breeze off the Pacific Ocean and say, you know what? I am lucky to have been born an American, and I think being able to serve, and I'll be the first president elected since 1988 who's actually served overseas in a war. I think that's going to help me as commander-in-chief to know how you see these issues and understand that there are real lives at stake.
Doug Burgum struggled to get a lot of attention. Again, he was kind of the last person in for this debate, 7 people on the stage. And I thought the moderators struggled at many times during the course of the evening. And I thought that there were several times where they were a little dismissive of Doug Burgum. Yes, he's the lowest on the totem pole when it comes to polling and having a presence there. But he also has some pretty interesting things to say and has a record, especially when it comes to things like energy. And so there was a point where he did get to talk about energy in North Dakota. And he said he's ahead of all the other candidates in terms of implementing a real agenda that deals with energy, the border, and more.
The energy plans that have all been announced in the last month by these other folks on stage, we're already doing it in North Dakota. The border plans they're already talking about, we've got troops down at the border flying helicopter missions from North Dakota, from San Diego to the Gulf Coast. And on the energy policy, we're already doing it. It's not saying when nobody else done the big fights, North Dakota was leading the charge. To say that nobody's fighting the big fights, just look at the record of what we're doing right now. Energy, economy, national security, have been talking about it since day one. And now finally, good, we're having the conversation about it. But we've got the answer in North Dakota.
So I thought that was a good moment for Doug Burgum. Burgum also committed to shrinking the federal government, which he said no other president has been able to do for a very, very long time. And then he said, this is why I think I can actually get it done.
When I took office, We shrunk the state budget general fund by 27% in the first 4 months I was office, and all the trains still running on time. Why? Because you had a business leader that was actually there. This is totally possible to do it if you have somebody that understands, because having worked in technology for 30 years, everything we had to do was to be better, faster, and cheaper the next day. That's what we can do in government. That's what we're doing in North Dakota.
So we're going to stay with this conversation as it relates to the debate. We're hitting just some of the highlights for each of them, and you've probably noticed we don't have any of the arguing going on. We'll break down and we'll analyze what that all means as we stay with the conversation when it comes to those that are running on the Republican side of the aisle to claim the mantle of the highest office in the land. I thought there were a lot of moments that were just sheer misses. There were a lot of wild swings from some of the candidates. And probably the thing that was most disappointing to me was how many of the candidates sounded like they had a consultant or a poll-tested, consultant-certified message in their ear that they just had to get out. It undermined authenticity and credibility, and I think it didn't do a whole lot to build trust and momentum in the campaign. We'll talk about that coming up next.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. BYU history will be made Friday night.
Marion takes the jet sweep and gets into the end zone. Touchdown!
The Cougars host their first ever Big 12 game at LaVell Edwards Stadium.
The 10, the 5, the touchdown! LJ with the TD!
Friday night, it's BYU Cincinnati. Listen for KSL's extended pregame coverage at 6 and the kickoff at 8:15. That's Friday night on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars, KSL News Radio.
Hey, BYU football fans! Come see KSL's own Mitch Harper this Thursday, September 28th at Macy's Grocery Store in Lehigh, 760 East Main Street from 4 to 7 p.m. for fun, prizes, and chances to win tickets to the BYU Cincinnati football game or a $50 Macy's gift card. You'll have multiple chances to win every hour. And during the broadcast, be sure to visit the Macy's Meat Department and pick up some of their easy meals. They're all cut, seasoned, and prepared for you. Just put them on the grill or in the oven, and you have dinner in a snap. Those meals are perfect for dinner or any tailgate party. So celebrate the football season and join KSL's own Mitch Harper this Thursday, September 28th at Macy's Tailgate in Lehigh from 4 to 7 p.m. with food, activities for the family, and enter to win tickets to the BYU Cincinnati football game or a $50 Macy's gift card. Macy's. Happy shopping!
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Hey, we're Little Big Town, and we're hosting the first ever People's Choice Country Awards.
The award show for the people, by the people. At the home of country, the Grand Ole Opry House.
With live performances from Blake Shelton, Kane Brown, Kelsey Ballerini, plus special tributes to Toby Keith and Winona Judd. The People's Choice Country Awards, hosted by Little Big Town. Live from the Grand Ole Opry House, tonight on NBC.
Then, a story you'll see only on KSL 5 News at 10.
He's getting out of his car right now.
Road rage in Utah.
We're seeing a huge increase, it seems like.
The realities.
5 shots to my car. Screaming obscenities.
And the remedies.
We need to change our ways driving here in Utah.
KSL takes an in-depth look.
Our overall goal here is to make Utah's highways safer.
At a dangerous trend. Road rage, realities, and remedies. Tonight on KSL 5 News at 10.
Getting help with electrical repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, President Russell M. Nelson will not attend this weekend's General Conference events in person. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says he has a back injury. Second, a group of women say the sexual misconduct accusations against the founder of an anti-trafficking group are true. They spoke today through an attorney. And third, a House impeachment inquiry is underway today, looking into the foreign business dealings of President Biden's family. Right now, it's sunny, 72 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources. We're going to stay with the conversation. Of course, the big headline was the big debate last night down at the Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California. And while many would have liked to have channeled their inner Ronald Reagan, I don't know that anyone actually was able to do that last night. There was a lot of challenges, a lot of crosstalk, a lot of silly season kinds of things. The moderators struggled at times to keep control of the conversation. Some of the questions really set up some of the shenanigans rather than getting to the principle and the policy. And so I think there were a number of challenges in how everything rolled out and fell out. But there were some moments where principles and policy were talked about, and that's what we're highlighting on the show today, because to me, those are the things that actually matter. So let's go to one of those moments. Nikki Haley spoke of the crisis of fentanyl coming across the border and talking about how we need to take an aggressive stance towards Mexico. Also talked about how China has to be part of this as well.
But we're going to go after China because China is the one sending the fentanyl in the first place. And we will end all normal trade relations until China stops sending fentanyl. This is where President Trump went wrong. He focused on trade with China. He didn't focus on the fact that they were buying up our farmland. He didn't focus on the fact that they were killing Americans. He didn't focus on the fact that they were stealing $600 billion in intellectual property. He didn't focus on the fact that they put a spy base off our shores in Cuba. They didn't focus enough on the fact that all of our law enforcement drones in America are Chinese, and we've got all these little surveillance cells. We need to start focusing on what keeps Americans safe. That hasn't happened in a long time. As your president, I will make sure every American is safe, and we'll do whatever it takes to make that happen.
Many of the candidates talked about the looming government shutdown. We'll talk about that a little later on in the program. In fact, Representative John Curtis joins us from Washington, D.C. to talk about that coming up a little later on in the show as we careen towards the end of the month. As the candidates last night talked about it, Nikki Haley also took a policy stance to take pay away from members of Congress if they don't keep the government open.
And you mentioned Congress and shutting down government. I'll make it clear. We have to change the budget process. Congress has only delivered a budget on time 4 times in 40 years. Right. If they don't keep the government open, they should not get paid. No pay, no budget. All
right, so a good messaging component there. And there are some problems to that. Everyone cheers. That's a good applause line in terms of if you don't get the budget done, you don't get paid. There's also some challenges constitutionally in terms of coercion of someone to vote a certain way, and that could be problematic. But it is the right sentiment, I think, in terms of where the American people are. Hey, if you're not going to do your job, you shouldn't get paid for it. So let's get the job done. And Nikki Haley was absolutely right in that it's only been 4 times in 40 years that Congress has actually done their job, done it properly, and done it on time. And so I think that's an important part of the conversation. Tim Scott had a strong statement about racial discrimination in the country, the legacy of slavery, and how he's the leader to bridge the racial divide and lead the country forward.
Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. What was hard to survive was Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to take the black father out of the household to get a check in the mail, and you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore capitalism, and put Americans back at work. Our nation continues to go in the right direction. It's why I can say I have been discriminated against, but America is not a racist country. Never, ever doubt who we are.
Again, that was Senator Tim Scott, who can obviously speak from a unique perspective. And he said it right there at the end, that he is someone, as a black man, that has been discriminated against, and yet does not believe that the United States is a racist nation, that we have not lived up to the principles on many occasions and in many ways, especially for those across minority communities. But progress is being made, and that there is a path to move all of that forward. Now, Vivek Ramaswamy struck a very different tone during this debate. He offered, right off the bat, a little bit of reconciliation to the other candidates. They did not seem to be very receptive to that. It was really one of the first very heated and chaotic exchanges. And I just want to frame this just because it gives you a sense of where a lot of the conversation went. And so Mr. Ramaswamy had tried to say, hey, these are all good folks. And then immediately everything started to change.
I think this artificial division is unhelpful in our party. The real divide is not between the Republicans on this stage. And in the Reagan Library, I want to say these are good people on this stage.
We think about the fact that Vivek just said we were all good people, and I appreciate that, because last debate, he said we were all bought and paid for. And I thought about that for a little while and said, you know, I can't imagine how you could say that knowing that you were just in business with the Chinese Communist Party.
These are good people who are tainted by a broken system, and it's not the fault of anybody who's in power.
So a lot of back and forth there, and it actually got worse after that in terms of just the cross chatter. And I think the interesting thing was, so clearly Mr. Ramaswamy's consultant said, look, last time you came across way too hot, way too smug, and that's not very likable. And so you got to change that. So he tried to strike a little different tone, but then, of course, he had to back up what he had already said and already done. That's where it gets complicated as a candidate, because what you say gets remembered and often gets repeated. And so I think the interesting thing to me, some takeaways for me in terms of this second debate for the Republican side of the aisle, is the two very clear winners from last night were the former president and the current president. So with the kind of debate that it was, the former president in a very muddied and kind of muckety-muck field, it continues to give him an advantage moving forward because it maintained the status quo. Nothing changed. No one had a real breakout. No one really painted a vision of what could be done. And so that helps the former president continue to have a lead. But remember, the leads are only important in those early states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina. That's where some momentum. And we're about 115 days away from getting to the first in Iowa. And so we'll watch that. I think this also benefited the current occupant of the Oval Office, President Joe Biden, because as long as the former president is leading the Republicans, it strengthens what is a very weak President Biden in terms of his favorability ratings and how he's seen across the country. But if the choice is between the current president and the former president, I think the current president has an advantage. If it were one of the other members of the field there on the Republican side, then President Biden has a completely different set of problems. And so we'll break that down a little bit later on in the show as we get to the end of the program today. We'll talk about what some of that means and why no one is getting beyond the what they're against portion of the program. The vast majority of the night last night was spent backward-facing, either pointing at former President Trump or current President Biden as the problem. No one really painted a vision of what they were for or where they would like to lead the nation. And I think that's where there was a really big miss. And so good, bad, and ugly, not a whole lot of good, a whole lot of bad, and some that was just absolutely ugly and unwatchable. All in all, I don't think it changed the trajectory of the race at all. Another debate comes up 5 weeks from now, and then again, we're about 115 days away from the Iowa caucus, and that's where it will get really serious, and we'll continue to track all of that. All right, we'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. Don't go anywhere. We were over at Silicon Slopes Summit yesterday. We're going to continue that conversation just a little bit. Kate Rooney, technology reporter at CNBC and a speaker at the Silicon Slopes Summit, is going to join us coming up next. Stick around. We'll be right back. .30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top local story this hour.
President Russell M. Nelson will not attend this weekend's General Conference events in person. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says he has a back injury, one that will make it hard for him to sit in a chair for long periods of time. He says he is planning to record a message to share instead. Salt Lake City's 3 mayoral candidates are speaking out about the Great Salt Lake. KSL News Radio's Adam Small reports.
The Great Salt Lake Collaborative asked each candidate a series of questions like how the city and its residents would be impacted if the lake dried up. Former Mayor Rocky Anderson says the future of the city would be irrevocably altered.
Residents will leave to avoid the high risk of poisoning, adverse health effects.
Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall said it would also impact residents' mental health. Michael Valentine says it would be an environmental collapse.
You can find all of the candidates' responses on our website, kslnewsradio.com. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. A government shutdown is likely unless Congress reaches a deal before the weekend, but members of Congress won't have to worry about their bank accounts.
Members of Congress, under the Constitution, still get paid during a government shutdown. It would take a constitutional amendment to change that. Meantime, there are 4 million employees of the federal government who wouldn't get a paycheck, plus the federal contractors. So the number is even bigger than that.
That's ABC's Jay O'Brien reporting. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 171 points at this hour at 33,721. Coming up, sunny today. How long will it last? We've got KSL weather coming up next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
What do you need to hear in the morning to feel ready for the day?
Important news that happened overnight, the traffic you'll hit on the roads.
You'll be ready for your day with us.
Join Utah's Morning News 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Do you have an IRA or 401k? It's natural to think of this as being your money, right? But remember, you still have to pay taxes when you withdraw this money in retirement. And you could be paying a lot more in taxes on these accounts than you know. A lot more. Learn the strategies that can help you reduce or eliminate your taxes in retirement. Don't miss a special edition of Retirement Solutions Radio this Saturday afternoon at 3 o'clock, right here on KSL News Radio 1027.
Hey, man, looking good. It's Stitch Fix. I'd like to thank my stylist for making me look so great. They always get my fit just right. They send clothes that work for me and my budget. They even found me my favorite pair of jeans. I'd like to thank Stitch Fix because let's get real, I couldn't make this style happen on my own. They just make everything so easy. So thank you, Stitch Fix. They just get me, and they'll get you too. Stitch Fix. Take your style quiz today at StitchFix.com.
Made to Shine. Real stories from Shane Company customers.
We met later in life. I liked his dimples.
Both of our spouses had passed away, and we never expected to remarry.
That's the funny thing about love. It has its own agenda.
I wanted to get her a ring that celebrated our future, but didn't ignore our past.
I just wanted a party.
Shane Company helped me create the perfect ring, the center stone for us and the 2 side stones for our past loves.
Capture your love story with a unique engagement ring. Shane Company, fine jewelry since 1929.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
We have emergency traffic and weather together, brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
Emergency traffic, I-15 in Murray. That crash has multiple injuries involving a motorcycle that's northbound I-15 at 5300 South. The accident is blocking the left 3 lanes, causing deep slowdowns all the way down into Midvale. Is your car due for some extra love? Burt Brothers is here for your vehicle's routine maintenance, all done by our ASE certified technicians. Burt Brothers, affordable complete auto care, done better. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
The weather doesn't look like an emergency. We've got sunny but cooler today with a high of 77. Winds picking up over the weekend and rain likely on Sunday. Right now, sunny, 72 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, if you missed the show yesterday, we actually broadcast from Silicon Slopes Summit, held annually here in Salt Lake City. Of course, we're over at the Delta Center. And as we broadcasted there yesterday, amazing array of talent and thought leaders, people from all perspectives as it relates to tech and what's going on. And, of course, Utah's unique connection in all of that. Of course, you can go back and check out the podcast if you missed any of that. But we want to continue some of the crucial conversations going on there over at the summit. It wraps up later on today. Kate Rooney is here today. She's a technology reporter for CNBC, and she joins us from over at the summit. And, Kate, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I want to start, just kind of give your impression of the slopes. We'll talk about what you hit from the stage in just a minute. It's one of those places that just is a high energy space. We always call it the bumpability factor. It's all the people running into each other in the hallway conversations. Yeah. But give us your sense overall of what Silicon Slopes really means.
Sure. So this is my first year at this conference. It was very busy. It was good to see people back doing conferences. I feel like for the pandemic, this was really a huge part of my job, and we took a couple of years off there, so it's really nice to get back out there and kind of have that organic bumping into people, chatting, in the green room, and those kind of moments that you really miss, obviously, on Zoom. But it was great. I mean, it felt like the crowd was very much tech, but also sort of individual entrepreneurs. It was a very young crowd. Tony Robbins was a speaker. So it kind of seemed like this sort of aspirational, high-achieving group of people that I'm sure are in tech, but it also seemed to me like there were just some interesting, curious entrepreneurs there. And then a lot of kind of like pop-up shop type things and booths. And I was busy doing this panel, but I feel like I could have spent all day walking around the upper level of the Jazz Stadium.
Yeah, absolutely, and so fascinating. And in your role at CNBC, you watch all of these trends, and obviously it's been a bumpy ride for tech in general. Give us kind of your overall sense in terms of both where is tech, what are some of the challenges there, and how do you think conferences like this help some of those young entrepreneurs or those young businesses keep the energy up even when they may be a little stressed or a little tired with everything else going on?
Yeah, it's such a good point. And the optimism in tech is so obvious in times like this when interest rates are very high, inflation is hitting consumers, there's nervousness on Wall Street, and sort of our day-to-day with CNBC in some ways is looking bleaker than it was at least a year ago or 2 years ago. Yet you go to these conferences and you would not know that that's happening in the backdrop. People are very optimistic, long-term thinking, and it is contagious. I think it's nice to sometimes be around those groups, and it can really they tend to really see the best in things. So I think you have to be that way to be a tech entrepreneur. And so that was a theme. I think I spoke with Max Levchin, who's the CEO of a payment company called Affirm. Their stock price is down significantly. That's the case with a lot of tech companies. So they are dealing with this bigger backdrop of it's harder for them to raise money. It's harder for their valuations or basically the price of these companies. Yet they seem to be still focused and really painting a pretty rosy picture of the future.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And I want to talk about some of the things that you talked to today. In particular, let's start with AI. Obviously, a hot topic everywhere from the halls of Congress to the Delta Center and the Silicon Slopes. Give us your perspective. Where are we as it relates to AI?
So we did talk a bit about that in the context of payments. So this is a buy now, pay later company. It's basically installment loans. So you may have seen it if you're going to check out and buy a big ticket item. It gives you the option to pay in smaller increments. And Max Levchin, who is a founder of PayPal, and part of the PayPal mafia that people know from Elon Musk and Peter Thiel. And that company produced some really successful entrepreneurs and tech founders. Max is one of them. And so he's got a lot of thoughts on not only Affirm, but AI in general. He seemed optimistic about its ability to make our lives easier. So you can kind of think of it as a virtual assistant. You might have more time to do the things you really want to do and need to take less time to worry about your finances. And he seemed to think that that's where it would really help. Or he wasn't as sure was something called underwriting. So basically deciding whether or not to give someone a loan. He was worried about some of the decision making with AI. But he did not seem to be like existentially worried about it. And a lot of tech CEOs are. He seemed to kind of brush it off as a net positive. There are definitely downsides and things like fraud and the ability for generative AI, which is kind of the new buzzy thing in AI, is one of the downsides is, it's easy to mimic someone's voice, for example, or their face or their likeness. And that is something that he did seem very worried about. And I think it's something that they're quite focused on.
Oh, fascinating. Any other takeaways from that panel discussion today?
Yeah, he actually had some really good advice at the end. I asked him about his experience as a founder. He not only worked at PayPal, he worked at Google at one point, and after they acquired a company, he started, also founded Yelp and was one of their biggest backers. So he has really done it all. And this is, I think, something like his 10th company, and his first 3 or 4 failed. And he said that the advice that he had gotten, or he had never gotten, that he wished he had, and somebody would have told him, is to just keep going. And that you do kind of need that blind optimism to be successful and to be an entrepreneur, and just to basically dive in. And it's not as scary as you think. And that tends to be something he talked about, self-doubt, and said just to forget about your doubts and go for it. So that I thought was a successful entrepreneur.
That's good stuff. Yeah, we always say you run out of energy before you run out of opportunity, and sometimes you just got to keep
exactly.
plodding along.
Yeah, he would agree with that.
Well, before I let you go, just from your unique perch there at CNBC as you continue to watch the technology sector, give us a little of your look ahead. What is it that you're watching? What's on your horizon, or maybe just under the radar that we ought to be thinking about?
Sure. I would say a big buzzy thing right now, and it seems to be what every company is talking about. I think the thing that I'm watching is ahead of ourselves. So I also covered crypto, and so I'm quite familiar with bubbles, and that it just seems really reminiscent of what was going on with crypto and blockchain. So that's kind of what I'm focused on. Maybe, not to take the opposite of the tech optimist, but maybe a little bit of cold water on this. I think is what I've been thinking about a little bit lately is maybe we're ahead of ourselves. And then I always bigger picture. It sounds very boring, but interest rates are so important for everything that happens in the economy, whether it's how much your mortgage costs, how much you're paying on your credit card. So it's a boring topic, but I think it's really, really important, and also affects the tech companies that I talk to and cover. So people really are interested in that. And so it's busy time as always, and it's been a fun time to cover tech.
Yeah, absolutely, and those interest rates do really matter in terms of those tech companies being able to get that investment or get that money that's going to bridge them through a growth cycle or whatever it might be. And so we can let the heads be in the cloud, but the feet firmly planted on the ground. So we'll keep it there.
I should also say the tech scene in Utah and in Salt Lake in general, it's interesting. I live in San Francisco, and I'm in the area. It's always fascinating to go to other tech hubs and meet entrepreneurs that are based here. And there just seems to be momentum around some boys that live here and work remotely. And folks we talk to have moved all around the country. So it's been interesting to see where everyone's ended up in Salt Lake and broader Utah area. Been interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Utah has really become not just crossroads to the west, but crossroads to the world in a lot of those tech spaces. Kate Rooney's technology reporter at CNBC, speaker at the Silicon Slope Summit over at the Delta Center, wraps up later on today. Kate, thanks so much for carving out some time for us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
All right. Great stuff there from Kate Rooney. We'll take a quick break. More Inside Sources coming up next. Stick around.
This weekend, take a needed break, relax and refresh with the 193rd Semi-Annual General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. KSL's coverage begins Saturday morning at 9:30 with live sessions all weekend. We have you covered at 102.7 FM or on the app for KSL News Radio.
As we've all recently experienced, there are many factors out of our control that can cripple supply chains and break down our ability to get vital supplies for weeks, maybe even longer. Inflation and political instability means the cost of food could skyrocket. Now it's time to do something about it. The first step? Protect your family and stock up on what you need. ReadyWise meals taste incredible, are simple to make, easy to store, and offer up to a 25-year shelf life. ReadyWise is a leader in emergency food supplies and wants you prepared. So during General Conference weekend, enjoy the best pricing of the year. A 4-week supply with ReadyWise is just $174.99. That's $125 in savings. Or stock up with a 3-month supply for $597. That's over $500 in savings. Now start at ReadyWise.com/deals. These are conference deals available for a limited time. So visit ReadyWise.com/deals and be prepared. ReadyWise.
Attention smart homeowners. You don't have to fall for flashy promises and companies that don't even prove their work. At Your Service Pros uses third-party verification software called MeasureQuick to ensure your new HVAC system is installed correctly. This ultimate game changer in the HVAC industry lets you, the homeowner, have proof of how your system was installed. At Your Service Pros utilizes our Bluetooth tools to upload all of your system's information into MeasureQuick. We rely on data-driven insights to properly commission, optimize, and fine-tune your HVAC system for peak performance, improving your family's comfort, lowering your utility bills, and extending the life of your HVAC system. With rebates and tax credits available totaling more than $7,500 on a dual fuel heating and cooling system, it is now more important than ever that your HVAC system be installed correctly. So call us today at 801-YOUR-PRO. That's 801-YOUR-PRO. Have the peace of mind of saving up to 50% on your new system and knowing it's installed correctly by calling 801-YOUR-PRO.
Have you Googled yourself lately? Are there negative posts from an ex-employee or from a former client? Maybe an outdated news article or sensitive personal information about your family? Search engines don't always get it right. For right or wrong, it's your reputation on the line. That's where Reputation Defender by Norton comes in. One of the most trusted names in online reputation repair, Reputation Defender has been fixing people's search results for over 15 years. Their cutting-edge approaches help you to wipe away unwanted information in your search results. They also promote the good stuff so that it rises to the top, helping you put your best foot forward. Your good name is too valuable to leave to the whims of a Google algorithm. Take control with Reputation Defender. You can start by getting your free reputation report card at reputationdefender.com or call 800-401-6681 to speak to an expert. That's 800-401-6681.
Hey, Derek Overstreet here from the New Millennium Group, financial advisors in Utah. You know, I've been helping people retire in the state of Utah for the last 20 years. The way we do that is we actually find out what is important to you. We create a step-by-step plan that takes into consideration your income, your debt, whether you want money from real estate, stock market, annuities, life insurance, whatever. If you want to deal with professionals, people that are fiduciaries and have a legal responsibility and obligation to do what's in your best interest, give my team a call at 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370. Or go to my website, utahsfinancialplanner.com. If you'd like to retire 3 to 5 years before you thought it was possible, give my team a call right now. 888-999-6370. That's 888-999-6370.
Even before the pandemic, 1 in 5 American adults experience some form of mental illness, depression, suicide, prescription opioid misuse. Utah isn't immune to our share of challenges, but there is hope. We need to take action to keep our loved ones safe. That's why KSL has teamed with the University of Utah Huntsman Mental Health Institute to bring you hope and help you thrive. It's Healthy Mind Matters. Find out more at healthymindmatters.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, a back injury will keep President Russell M. Nelson from attending General Conference in person. He says he's following his doctor's advice. Second, Utah's governor is promising the state will find a way to keep WIC benefits flowing to state residents who rely on them, even in a government shutdown. And third, members of Congress will continue to get their paychecks in the event of a shutdown. Right now, it's sunny and 72 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, the Federal Trade Commission and 17 states are suing Amazon, claiming it has a monopoly that has been using unfair practices. The lawsuit has the potential to break up the company if it goes all the way to the end. So what exactly does the lawsuit say? What impact would this have on competition, on big tech in general, and on you and me? James Chudnowski, of course, a senior policy analyst at Americans for Prosperity, joins us on the line. James, thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me, Boyd.
So for our listeners who aren't following this too closely, I think everyone knows Amazon is very big and very strong and has done a lot to build out a multi-trillion-dollar organization. But give us some sense in terms of what is it that the 17 states and the FTC are saying in these allegations, and then we can kind of walk through what that might look like.
Yeah, absolutely. So the FCC and 17 states that are suing Amazon are saying that it is engaging in anti-competitive business practices in order to maintain a monopoly on its e-commerce empire that it has. Amazon obviously has over 200 million people that are subscribed to its Prime services around the globe. And that is the crux of what this case is focused on, is their practices surrounding how they actually handle sellers that are trying to operate on that platform. By having certain provisions around anti-discounting or having them have to use Amazon's fulfillment services if they're going to be a seller on Prime, for example. These are some of the things that they're pointing out as alleging that it is anti-competitive conduct there. So that's why you're seeing the FTC and the 17 states go after Amazon pretty hard right now. For Lena Khan, this is really the fulfillment of a lifelong dream. She wrote a paper on this while she was in law school at Yale. And this is her bringing it to life, bringing that paper to reality.
Yeah, interesting. The way many have framed that is that's the most important case the FTC has brought in, 109 years of their history. But walk us through in terms of what that process looks like. Obviously, a $1.3 trillion empire, looking at all the business practices that happen inside of there. What does this actually look like as it moves forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So obviously they're going to be going through the motions with the district court to go through the evidence that the FTC has brought against Amazon. And, the FTC is seeking remedies to go and force Amazon to go and change some of its behavior. So if the FTC were to become successful and prevail against Amazon on any of these counts, it could mean, Amazon having to take actions to restructure the way that it's doing its businesses in pretty significant ways that would probably go and alter the services it's providing consumers, ones that they particularly like Prime shipping, in part because that's 2-day free shipping and it's something that consumers highly value. So that's, I think, the biggest threat that they're facing here. But I think really the overarching problem, and this is the burden that the FTC has to prove, is what is the harm to consumers? When you're looking through the complaint that the FTC has against Amazon, the emphasis and the focus is not on the consumers but on sellers. And that seems to fly in the face of antitrust law as it's been practiced here in the United States over the last, 50 years or so, since we've been focusing on the consumer welfare standard, where the focus is on what is the harm to consumers as the result of a business activity. And if you can prove that you are substantially lessening competition and that you are harming consumers in the process of doing so, that can go and justify an action here. But the FTC has a hard case to prove in front of them now.
Yeah, it does seem to be a hard case. And I wanted to get your perspective on this, James, because we've sort of created this environment where big is bad. And sometimes that is the case. And is it in this case, is big bad? Or is this, as you said, is this more about dealing with sellers in the process as opposed to what is actually best for consumers?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter of what you just said. They're focusing on the wrong things. They're focusing on the sellers over the consumers, and I think that kind of thought process there can run the risk of adverse results that would result in consumers having to pay even higher prices in an economy that's been littered with inflation underneath the Biden presidency. It seems to lean into the Bidenomics kind of notions there, which frankly don't make much sense to me. As an economist, seems to perplex me a little bit what they think they're doing over there. But with this, I think that, the problem is that, and this is the same reason why the FTC has been winless in court. I think that the nice thing about the consumer welfare standard is that it is a very data-driven kind of approach. You have to demonstrate the harm and show that this is why the action is necessary. And I don't think that the FTC brings the goods. They're treating Amazon and e-commerce as if it's the only player in town, and that's just simply not true. We've seen story after story over the last couple of years of how Amazon is facing increasing pressure from other online retailers, whether that's Walmart or Costco or Target. Any of these other services have been getting increasingly into the e-commerce game, and you can't just ignore them on that front. And also, I think the other thing that gets overlooked too is that you have to go and show that somehow they're extracting monopoly rents from having this kind of a program and service. And if you look at all the things that Amazon does as a company, it might be worth $1.3 trillion. But I'll tell you right now, that's not what's bringing in the money for Amazon. It's not their Prime subscription services and the things they're selling on Amazon.com. It's their web services side of the company that's really what's contributed to so much growth and valuation in the company. So, again, I think the FTC is just missing a lot here and making a mountain out of a molehill and setting itself up for failure.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing. Often in these kinds of cases, there does seems to be a lot of theatrics and a lot of messaging that goes on, and it is kind of that big is bad sort of thing. But let's get back to sometimes in this rush to at least say you're going to alleviate the suffering of some, you end up creating suffering for many more. And so talk to us for just a second in terms of the impact on e-commerce and actual impact on the consumers.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that the biggest problem that happens if Amazon has to restructure how it's doing Prime services, or if it has to go and let sellers go in and do their own fulfillment services, which their compliance rate of actually shipping things on time was, according to one study, as low as 13%, I think, as opposed to Amazon's, which is significantly higher. So, again, I think it means less investment in this space, less opportunities for smaller businesses to go and get themselves onto a platform like Amazon where they can have a larger customer base than they otherwise would, which I think a lot of people don't realize. Before the internet, that wasn't really a thing for many folks. If you were an established company, you could afford to go and do advertising and whatnot. But with the internet and e-commerce, now it's a lot easier for a small business to kind of build out its own brand. I think that, again, it results in less innovation, higher prices for consumers, less options available to them as a result of it. And again, it just leaves everybody worse off. I think that that's not the place we want to be heading into an election year. I think Americans, the number one and two issues always when we're looking at survey data is the economy and inflation. And this is going to go and exacerbate some of the very issues that we're seeing in those top two issues on voters' minds. So it makes no sense.
Yeah, and just in the last 30 seconds, as you watch this thing play out, any nuances that you're going to be watching in terms of how the FTC rolls out their case, or anything that might give us an indication of how this might play out?
Yeah, I think that we're going to go and see the FTC try to rely on selective, emails from executives. They seem to always love bringing those out to light to go and frame it like they didn't care or that they knew or something of that nature. So I think it's always, business communications that seemingly try to go and alter the PR war that's ultimately going on with this case in the background. And for Lina Khan, it's just keeping an eye out where if she does fail, it's going to be used for nefarious purposes politically to try to get Congress to do radical changes to antitrust law, which would be a bad thing. So I think that those are the two overarching themes that we're going to see playing out in this court case here, depending on how the judge comes down on it.
Great breakdown, great analysis as always. James Chudnowski, Senior Policy Analyst at Americans for Prosperity. James, thanks for weighing in. Really helped us walk through what is something that looks big and looks far away, but impacts all of us who are doing anything in the e-commerce space or buying anything online. James, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that wraps up hour number one of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. We will step aside for some top-of-the-hour news. When we come back, the question, what's wrong with Washington? Well, one answer might lie in the Farm Bill. We'll break that down coming up next. Stick around.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen at home on any smart speaker and in your car at 102.7 FM. This is KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top story this hour. President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will attend General Conference virtually this weekend. In a statement on the church's website, he wrote that he suffered a back injury 2 days after his 99th birthday, and the doctor has advised him to take it slow. President Nelson says he plans to watch the sessions and he'll record a message for conference. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The Senate is scrambling to prevent a government shutdown before the end of the month.
House Speaker Kevin McCarthy insistent that the Senate's 6-week funding plan won't advance in the lower chamber without addressing border security funding. ABC News learning some senators are discussing that addendum as Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell warns a government shutdown could cost many border agents their pay.
The Border Patrol and the ICE agencies have to continue to work for nothing.
Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says the upper chamber's funding plan could go for a floor vote by Saturday or sooner. Justin Finch, ABC News, Washington.
Utah's governor says WIC benefits will continue through October, even in the event of a shutdown. A news release from the governor's office says they'll continue using funds from the Department of Agriculture. The Women, Infants, and Children Nutrition Program serves about 44,000 Utahns. Your money at this moment, the Dow up 116, the S&P 500 up 25, the NASDAQ up 108 points. Coming up, we've got emergency traffic. Everything you need to know up next. KSL News Time, 2:01.
We have enough people running around Broadcast House at 4 in the morning to field a football team.
Producers, reporters, the traffic team, and us.
This is Tim and Amanda.
Join us each morning from 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Transform your outdated kitchen with half-price Granite. Replace your entire kitchen with beautiful and affordable options with Granite for only $2,500. Yeah, $2,500. Not interested in countertops? No worries. Half-price Granite is now in stock with gorgeous cabinets and flooring options to choose from. You're sure to find something you love. Call 801-486-1700. 801-486-1700. Half-price Granite. Online at halfpricegranite.com. Half-price Granite. Affordable luxury.
You can stream your favorite show anytime, but the opera only happens 4 times per year. Join us and make new memories with your family and friends. Enjoy the entertaining stories, beautiful sets and costumes, and mesmerizing music. You deserve an elegant night on the town or a Sunday matinee with Utah Opera. Your couch will be there when you get back. This is it, your perfect first opera. October 7th through the 15th, Utah Opera begins its season with one of the most popular operas of all time, Puccini's La Bohème. This tragic love story will seem familiar. It was the inspiration for the smash hit Rent. You'll recognize characters and moments like Mimi asking Rodolfo to light her candle, but now experience it with an operatic twist. Tickets start at $21. Get yours today at utahopera.org.
Hey, Doug.
Yes, Kathy.
Tell folks about Window World Doors.
Oh, yeah, thanks. We do entry doors, back doors, sliding patio doors, and storm doors.
And I just love the amazing door styles and the colors.
That's right, completely stained or painted, professionally installed with hardware.
So call us today, 801-281-8111.
Or visit windowworldutah.com.
Window World, simply the best for less.
That's no baloney.
Get Mr. Max Performance Missionary Package. 1 performance suit, 4 and collar stretch shirts, 3 ties, 1 mission belt, and 1 pair of Echo or Johnston & Murphy shoes. Just $595.
Emergency traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
Emergency traffic continues on I-15 going northbound in Murray due to a crash with injuries near 5300 South. All lanes are open again, with the remainder on the left shoulder. The delays are stop and go back to 90th South. Then in Davis County, an earlier multi-vehicle crash that took down a power line has closed the intersection at 2600 South and Highway 89. Best to avoid the area and find an alternate route. With over 30-plus specialties and multiple locations across Utah, Revere has you covered for all your health needs. Revere Health, your partner in health, your partner for life. Online at reverehealth.com. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny but cooler today with a high of 77 degrees, possibly some rain over the weekend. Right now, sunny, 72. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Many believe that the bipartisanship is dead in Congress, and when it comes to things like immigration reform, passing a budget, other issues, it certainly seems to be that way. But bipartisanship is actually alive and well when it comes to $1 trillion piece of legislation, the Farm Bill. The headlines say that's a good thing. But beyond the headlines, are the backroom deals, wasteful spending, and steep costs really worth it? Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
Well, we often talk about the conflict in Washington being a problem, but often it's the collusion that can really get you $33 trillion in debt. To help us break all of that down, really pleased to have back on the program with us today Scott Lincicome. Of course, he's the author of Capitalism for the Dispatch, and he's also vice president of general economics and trade at the Cato Institute. And Scott, welcome back to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So whenever we hear the Farm Bill, we think, okay, everyone's going to rally together. This is going to be a wonderful piece of bipartisanship in our nation's capital. You actually wrote recently that the Farm Bill is actually a case study in what's wrong with Washington. Tell us about it.
Well, I mean, you just start with the sheer amount of spending involved. None of it, of course, financed. None of it, we're not cutting spending elsewhere. This is just good old-fashioned spending. And like you mentioned, we're talking about $1 trillion in new spending. A lot of that is food stamps or SNAP, but a lot of it is just subsidies to American farmers to the tune of about $50 to $60 billion in over about 10 years. So, and then you look at the other things that are in this bill, specific subsidies for whether it's dairy farmers or sugar barons or you name it. There's just a ton of taxpayer spending involved. So that's, of course, the place you start. But I think the bigger problem is that spending really doesn't get any scrutiny. The fact is, like you mentioned, the Farm Bill just tends to pass overwhelmingly. The debates that happen are kind of like debating the deck chairs on the Titanic, right? You're just talking about where the chairs should go. We're not really ever talking about changing spending levels. We're not talking about whether maybe we should consider SNAP separately, food stamps, separately from farm subsidies. And we're certainly not talking about actually cutting farm subsidies, which have been around since the New Deal. And that gets, I think, to the other big problem. Back when American farm subsidies started, the reasons were somewhat justifiable. American farmers were really struggling. They were some of the poorest Americans. They're some of the poorest people in the country. Median incomes in the farm sector were very low, and the farm economy was very erratic, particularly in the Great Depression in that period. Well, none of that is true now. Today, farmers are actually much wealthier than the average American. Incomes in the typical farm are in over $100,000 a year. But even worse is that, the big recipients of the Farm Bill aren't family farms at all. They're giant corporations. And so at the end of the day, the Farm Bill is really the vast majority of Farm Bill spending on the subsidy side is going to people and businesses that don't need it at all. And like I said, none of this ever really gets any scrutiny.
Yeah, and that's I want to unpack a couple of those things. One, I just want you to repeat the fact that the largest recipients are not kind of those typical family farmers. They're actually really, really big corporations.
Right, and that comes from how the subsidies are designed. The subsidies don't actually target individuals. What they target is sometimes they target prices, and sometimes they target acreage. So at the end of the day, if you sell more or if you have a bigger farm, well, you get more money. from the government. And that inevitably means, simply by design, that the biggest recipients of Farm Bill cash are going to be the biggest farming conglomerates and corporations in the country, if not the world. And that's why, really we need to have a real debate about the necessity of a lot of this spending. I mean, in Washington these days, unfortunately, $50 billion isn't a lot of money, but if it's wasteful, it's still $50 billion, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't, of course, get into then how we're distorting the farm economy in all these crazy ways, again, for no good reason.
Yeah, and it seems to me that the more complex they make it, the easier it is for members of Congress to say, well, this is really complicated, and so we're just going to throw $1 billion here and $1 billion there, and it adds up real quickly. I think one of the interesting things, and you mentioned this right off the top, and I want to go back to this because I think it's important. So we talk about that SNAP program. And that's one that immediately everyone says, oh, we have to protect that. We have to watch out for the children, which we do, of course. Why is that part of the Farm Bill? And why is it that we aren't looking at that on its own merits and making sure that it's being most effective for those it's supposed to be helping?
Well, this is really, a textbook case of how politics and policy gets made in Washington, and I don't mean that in a good way. The fact is that people mainly on the left in Congress that really like welfare programs and the SNAP program, they team up with people mainly on the right who really like farm subsidies because they represent farmers and farm states. And they realized that they can actually get their bills passed by combining the measures. We call this log rolling.
Yeah.
So by combining the measures, you actually insulate them from scrutiny, and you end up with overwhelming votes, even though SNAP could use reform and the Farm Bill parts certainly could use reform too. And quite frankly, there's log rolling even in the subsidy parts because the peanut guys get together with the dairy guys that get together with the corn guys and the wheat guys and the rest. And these are the lobbyists I'm talking about. 600 different organizations lobbied on the last Farm Bill. And they all get together and they realize that, look, if we package all of these subsidies together, then all of our members will, you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back, and all of a sudden you have a 50 votes or a majority that you need to get the subsidies through Congress. So it's actually double log rolling in the sense of SNAP and the subsidies themselves.
Yeah, double log rolling. We're going to make that into an Olympic event, I think, in our nation's capital. We'd have a few experts there. I did get a little bit of a grin in that Senator Chuck Grassley, of course, a longtime senator from Iowa, he actually said he's going to vote against the bill because it's all, done in behind closed doors, dark rooms, conference committees. Nice to see somebody from the state of Iowa saying, hey, wait a minute, this whole Farm Bill thing isn't quite what it used to be.
Yeah, and to the senator's good credit, certainly he still supports some farm subsidies, but he was trying to put income caps on some of these subsidy programs which would radically lower the total spending and at least ostensibly target people who might actually need the money. What happened, of course, the bill which passed by the House, and then you have a companion bill passed by the Senate. Well, that goes to conference. The conference included a bunch of farm state folks and excluded Senator Grassley. So when the bill that came out of conference, when it came out, it didn't have any of those income caps. And Grassley was left on the outside looking in. And this is another classic Washington move, what I call omnibusing, which is essentially the idea that you take a bill, you make it in a urgent, must-pass package, you release it mere hours before you have to vote on it, and then everybody just has to vote regardless of what's actually in it. And only the people that are crafting the bill actually know at the end of the day what's in it, and that's, again, exactly what happened in this case.
Yeah, it is textbook. It is a classic what is wrong, and it is actually the model. Scott, you've actually shown us how you get $33 trillion in debt. It's not through conflict, it's through collusion. And we're equal opportunity offenders left and right do this and collude together. It's the only way you can spend this much money and get that deep in debt. Scott Lincicome, author of Capitalism for Our Friends over at The Dispatch, also Vice President of General Economics and Trade at the Cato Institute. Always fantastic breakdown. Scott, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me.
Great perspective there from Scott Lincecum. So important that you look at, you can say all the good things that are in there. And are there some things that are good for the small family farm? Yeah, but it's really, really small. What's good for the big corporate farms? There's a whole lot in there. And there's a whole lot of other things that have nothing to do with farming or agriculture or anything else, but they just get tucked in because that's how you get the farm bill passed. It's not conflict, folks. It's collusion. It's over $1 trillion in spending, and I guarantee you no one will have read what's actually in there except for the lawyers, the lobbyists, and the people who are behind those closed doors in the committee. There's a better way to get it done. We'll be right back.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson. BYU history will be made Friday night.
Marion takes the jet sweep and gets into the end zone. Touchdown!
The Cougars host their first ever Big 12 game at LaVell Edwards Stadium.
The 10, the 5, the touchdown! LJ with the TD!
Friday night, it's BYU Cincinnati. Listen for KSL's extended pregame coverage at 6 and the kickoff at 8:15. That's Friday night on Utah's legacy home of the Cougars. KSL News Radio.
September means it's time for Any Hour Services free furnace sale. What's up, everybody? I'm Mike Wilson with Any Hour Services, and as summer comes to a close and falls right around the corner, the weather gets, well, perfect. And when the weather's perfect, people need a little extra incentive to replace their heating and cooling system. That's where Any Hour Services free furnace sale comes in. For the month of September, when you have Any Hour Services install a new air conditioner, we'll give you a new furnace for just the cost to install it. About $400. The furnace is free, you just pay the labor. And there's no catch. There's no raising the price on the air conditioner first. There's no making you buy the most expensive air conditioner to qualify. There's none of that. There's just a desire to keep our technicians working while the weather's mild and a genuine appreciation of you for helping us keep them busy. So if you've been thinking about replacing your old furnace and air conditioner and want to know exactly how much you can save during our free furnace sale, call Any Hour Services today and schedule a free estimate. Google Any Hour Services or schedule online at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
I'm Naheem Hines, proud supporter of the Muscular Dystrophy Association. My mom has muscular dystrophy, and the MDA helps her and kids like my buddy Ethan.
My name is Ethan, and I'm 12 years old. Thanks to the Muscular Dystrophy Association and people like you, I have more hope than ever before. And MDA funds over 150 care centers for kids like me.
For over 70 years, MDA has been transforming the lives of people living with muscular dystrophy, ALS, and related neuromuscular diseases. Learn more at MDA.org today.
Hey man, looking good. It's Stitch Fix. I'd like to thank my stylist for making me look so great. They always get my fit just right. They send clothes that work for me and my budget. They even found me my favorite pair of jeans. I'd like to thank Stitch Fix because let's get real, I couldn't make this style happen on my own. They just make everything so easy. So thank you, Stitch Fix. They just get me, and they'll get you too. Stitch Fix. Take your style quiz today at StitchFix.com.
Nothing slows my little girl down, except a stuffy nose.
Mommy.
That's why I use Sinex Children's Saline from Vicks. Sinex instantly clears mucus in everyday stuffy little noses with a gentle, ultra-fine mist designed for kids. Just Sinex? Breathe. Her stuffy nose is gone for now. And so is she.
Sinex Children's Saline. Sinex, breathe. Use as directed, keep out of reach of children.
I was crossing the street when I met the love of my life. I chased after her. Nothing would stand in my way. Not the dog walker, nor the hot dog vendor. Finally reaching her, I asked, "What do you call that amazing smell?"
It's Gain Flings.
Gain Flings. My love had a name, but more importantly, it had a scent.
Fall in love with Gain Flings. Seriously good scent. Gain Flings with 50% more freshness ingredients versus leading bargain detergent.
Join Mike Stevens of Capital Wealth Advisors for Retire Right Radio, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's Retire Right Radio with Mike Stevens, Saturdays at 5 a.m. and 9 p.m.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will attend General Conference virtually this weekend while he recovers from a back injury. Second, we're hearing for the first time from women who say they were victimized by the founder and former CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard. He denies their claims. And third, members of Congress continue to work to avoid a government shutdown. Their deadline is midnight Saturday night. Right now it's sunny and 72 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Business, organizational, and other thought leaders, of course, continue to gather at the Silicon Slopes Summit here in Salt Lake City over at the Delta Center. We're thrilled to be joined by Joanna Berkey, the Chief Information Security Officer at HP Inc. She's also on the board of directors at Overstock, or Bed Bath & Beyond, as we get to the new name there. Joanna has been in the middle of a lot of the crucial conversations on cybersecurity, other digital trends in tech. And Joanna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here.
So give us a little sense, being over there we say it's the bumpability factor of just walking the hallways over there. A lot's going on, but give us your perspective being over at the summit today.
It's amazing the number of people I've bumped into and met and talked to today. I am impressed with this. The leading opener this morning kept asking, "How are you feeling?" And the right answer was outstanding. And by the time I got on stage, I did feel outstanding. It's really amazing to see the breadth of the companies here and to see the variety of the people and the conversations that are happening.
Yeah, and all of those conversations, as I said in the open, you've been in the middle of a lot of those conversations. And let's start kind of in that crucial area of information security. Obviously a big deal, very important to those at the summit, but important to all of us.
It has been, I sometimes joke that I ask myself, how in the world did I end up in the middle of, modern digital warfare? I did not intentionally enlist in the military for reasons, one of which is I don't like being told what to do. But
we're going to come back to that.
I've ended up in this field, which honestly, it's been an incredible blessing to be in this field because, we get caught up in the day-to-day of securing systems, securing our enterprises, fighting the bad guys. But when you zoom out a little bit and you realize what you're really doing, we are truly working to keep the individuals' lives safer as individuals live more and more connected lives and do more and more things digitally.
Yeah, so important. And I want to get to your story because I want to talk about that navigating that career path. And that's such an important thing. We've talked a number of times, both yesterday at the summit and also on some of our coverage today about the summit, is that obviously the tech sector is going through all the jolts and challenges that everyone else is dealing with interest rates and economy and so on. And we usually say that we often run out of energy before we run out of opportunity. You've had one of those journeys through your career that have required a lot of energy. Walk us through that.
It's people that look at my bio or look at my career on LinkedIn will often come to me and say, how in the world did you have such a great career journey? And my answer to them is, it did not feel like a journey when I was in the middle of it. I learned really early on that even once I got out of school, I still wanted to learn. I love learning. And as I started working, and I started as a software engineer at first, then I started managing engineers. Then I became a manager of engineers. And I realized it's a heck of a lot more fun to be an engineer than to manage engineers, by the way. And I started about 15 years of a lot of lateral movement. And I wish that we could do away with the term career ladder.
Yeah.
Because that implies that it's one direction and that it's always up.
Yeah.
Mine was not. I moved around to learn different things. I got in and out of management. Sometimes I moved, what people would say backwards. Like, oh, you were managing people and now you're not. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to learn a new area.
Yeah.
And after about 2 decades of doing that, I feel like I've had a really broad experience, which now serves me really well in this field that is never the same day to day.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many lessons in there. I would love to spend the next 4 hours unpacking, especially for our younger listeners, that it's not this ladder. We just have to get rid of that. I've often joked that my career is a absolute manifestation of if you ever want to make God laugh, just tell him your plan. And it's my wife says my career has a certain staccato effect, but it's that same kind of thing of you move laterally, you move backwards, but the learning component.
That's right.
Is the crucial piece of the puzzle.
It really is. And I would love to do away with that dialogue of you start a career and then it's like you're on this unidirectional path forever. And you're not. And eventually, I was really lucky, or naive is a better word. You could say dumb, but we'll call it naive. That early on, I'm like, why wouldn't you move around? I'm going to move around. Sounds like fun. And then, finally you get to the point where you're older and it's a little bit more scary to move around.
Yeah.
But as long as you're learning and you've got that mental growth, then I think that's the trajectory that matters.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think especially in the tech space, we always talk about the fact that the shelf life of a formal education is like 18 months, especially in the tech space. It's probably a half-life. Everything you learned in the first 2 years is already obsolete. And so it's that discipline of learning, but to your point, it's the love of learning that is the real crucial piece of the puzzle.
And it is so interesting to me. You know, I don't feel like I'm that old. I do see the white hair when I look in the mirror. But when I look back at how I coded when I first started working, and that was less than 3 decades ago, by the way, that bears no resemblance to how people code today.
Yeah.
And now people are even saying, a lot of the need for coding will change a lot with how we use generative AI, which I do believe. So even in the lifespan of a couple of decades in tech, I think that love of learning is huge.
Yeah, no question about that. And let's leverage that as you look forward. What are you looking to learn next? What are the innovations? What are the things that you're watching as everything moves forward?
I'm still spending a lot of time looking at how things work in the cloud. It's if you want to be really reductionist about it, you say, well, you used to have a server that you could reach out and touch, and now that server sits somewhere else, but you still use it like you used to. But what that means in an operational standpoint, and what does that mean for resilience? What does that mean for security? What does that mean for delivery to a customer? We're still, I think, on the evolution of how we really make cloud work in all the ways that it needs to work.
Yeah.
But, of course, I cannot sit here and tell you that I'm not spending as much time as I can learning about the different types of AI. In my attaché case over there, there's a book called The Age of AI. I just finished one called The Alignment Problem. There's a lot to learn in this space.
Yeah.
And I think AI is really the first thing I've run across so far over the last couple of decades where I feel like we have to learn about it. Yeah. It's not an option to just say, oh, there's this thing and we're going to use it. I don't really need to know much about it.
Yeah.
I don't think that works anymore.
Absolutely. And I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier, just on the cybersecurity front. A lot of us hear that and we think, oh, yeah, I'll work on getting better passwords. We don't really think about it in our day-to-day, but you see that in terms of how it can impact everything from national defense and national security right down to that individual. Give us some things that we should be thinking about when we talk about cybersecurity.
The way that we live our lives now, you really, really have to work to not be online. And in some ways, it's just not feasible any longer. So there are tools like MFA, which stands for multi-factor authentication. And all of us, when we get told by our bank, hey, when you log in, can we send you a text? And that's going to help validate who you are. These different layers of authentication, they do matter. They do have a good effect. They are something we should use as individuals. But another tool that we have that I think people don't feel empowered about is we need to hold companies to account for what they are offering to us. Yeah. The sorts of end-user license agreements we agree to. There's been a MO developed where, you get we call them EULA from a company, and it's 30 pages long, and of course you're not going to read that, and they don't expect you to anyway. That's really not sustainable.
Yeah.
And we as the consumer, and we as, 330 million individuals in the United States, we have a voice. And I think we need to start using that voice a little more as well.
So important to be engaged and to really get all the way through there. Joanna Berkey is the Chief Information Security Officer at HP, was, of course, announced as a Board of Directors of Overstock.com, part of the Silicon Slopes Summit over at the Delta Center. And we appreciate you coming across the street and joining us for a little breakdown today. Great insight. We look forward to having you back. We're going to continue this conversation, but thanks for jumping on with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
All right. We'll go ahead and step aside for some bottom of the hour news. When we come back, more Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. Stick around.
2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Becky Bruce. KSL's top local story this hour. We're hearing for the first time from women who say they were victimized by the founder and former CEO of Operation Underground Railroad, Tim Ballard. Attorney Suzette Rasmussen offered very few specifics, but said the women she represents stand behind the accusations.
We value our privacy as we work to rebuild our lives. We also feel a responsibility to speak out and state unequivocally that these allegations are true.
Ballard has insisted the accusations are not true. He left Operation Underground Railroad in June. President Russell M. Nelson of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints will attend General Conference virtually this weekend. In a statement on the church's website, he wrote that he suffered a back injury 2 days after turning 99, and his doctors advised him to take it easy. President Nelson says he plans to watch the sessions, and he'll record a message for conference. The church statement also says Elder Jeffrey R. Holland of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles still recuperates from recent health challenges, and he will also be participating from home. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. Senator Bob Menendez says he will not resign after meeting with his fellow Democrats. He's facing federal bribery and corruption charges. Your money at this moment. The Dow ends the day up 116 points. The S&P 500 up 25. The NASDAQ up 108. Coming up, we'll check your drive home and see if that emergency traffic is still in play. KSL News Time, 2:31.
Start your days with knowledgeable, friendly voices telling you about the latest news and weather out there.
Hi, this is Tim Hughes and Amanda Dixon.
In the business of waking you up each morning from 5 to 9.
On KSL News Radio.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. A humiliating layoff. My former student then faced 5 months of unemployment. Every day he worked to find a job, and every day he was rejected. Then a listing for the perfect job. Now, he'd been rejected for that job previously, but he knew somebody who'd worked for the company, so he called the person who laid him off and asked for help. Within hours, once the company had 800 applicants, the posting was closed. My student received another rejection. Then the phone rang. He was offered an interview. After 3 interviews, he was offered the job. I'm proud of him. He swallowed his pride. He asked for help. He knew that hiring is about personal connection, not just computer algorithms. Learn more about managing your career in an MBA from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Embrace the majesty of the great outdoors and celebrate Bryce Canyon National Park's 100th birthday at Ruby's Inn. Skip the long lines and expensive hotel rooms and escape to the American West. Ride, hike, bike, and play among the towering hoodoos right in Ruby's backyard. Embrace your inner cowboy and take a guided horseback tour across the rim of Bryce Canyon. And no trip to Ruby's Inn is complete without dinner and a show at Ebenezer's Barn and Grill. After a long day of adventure, spend your nights in a cozy hotel room or camp out in a rustic campground. With affordable and varied lodging options, any family will feel right at home at Ruby's Inn. For some extra savings, be sure to take advantage of the hot deals running throughout the year. This year, treat your family to the adventure of a lifetime. Book your trip today at ruby'sinn.com. That's ruby'sinn.com.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates this weekend only. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Mountain America Expo Center, Sandy. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Emergency traffic and weather together brought to you by Granite Credit Union's new Dividend Plus checking account. Here's Josh Kitchen.
should be coming out of it soon, but we still remain in emergency traffic on I-15 going northbound in Murray. That's due to an earlier injury crash near 5300 South. All lanes are open with emergency vehicles still on the left shoulder. Residual heavy delays are down to 90th South. In Davis County, the intersection at 2600 South and Highway 89 is still closed. That's due to a multiple vehicle crash, which took down some power lines. Best avoid the area and find an alternate route. Do you want a heating and air company which uses third-party verification over their work? That's one of the highest rated on both Google and Yelp? Then call At Your Service Pros, 801-YOUR-PRO. I'm Josh Kitchen in the KSL Traffic Center.
Sunny but cooler today, the high 77. Winds picking up on Saturday and some rain likely on Sunday. Right now, you've got sunny skies holding steady at 72 degrees. I'm Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio, 102.7 FM, 1160 AM, and KSLNewsRadio.com, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it's a busy day in our nation's capital, and a lot of the attention, of course, is on all of the fight and the fuss around funding the government and the showdown and the shutdown potential and what's happening behind the scenes there. But I want to start with some of the things that continue to get done in Washington and the good work that's being done and work that impacts us right here in the state of Utah. And really pleased to have joining us on the line today Representative John Curtis. And Representative Curtis, one, thanks for carving out time. I know you are just running and gunning today, but I want to start by talking about something that is getting done and talk about this Bipartisan Wildfire Commission report. Give us some insight there.
Thanks, Boyd. First of all, for having me on. Utahns are no strangers to fires and forest, and are very well aware that substantial damage and even loss of life can happen. We're in a very vulnerable state, and especially with our drought. And I was really pleased a number of months ago to join the Congressman Neguse, Democrat from Colorado, who shares a similar district. And we started the Wildfire Caucus, and out of that has come this commission. And there is so much that we can do. And the good news is this can be a really bipartisan issue. And we have high expectations from a commission that can make bipartisan suggestions that can help us do this so much better so that it's not such a risk for our residents.
Yeah, and such an important thing you mentioned just here in the state of Utah. You noted that there's been 752 fires, 16,000 acres of land. That is way beyond the suboptimal category. But tell us about the commission. What's the makeup of the commission? What is the task? What is it that they're really hoping to look at, and what do you hope they deliver in the end?
Well, I would hope they would deliver some legislative suggestions that can be supported by both sides of the aisle. And just to kind of throw out, what some of those might be. We have serious pay problems for those who fight our fires. And we're not being serious, about having a force that's ready and to go to work. We have serious mitigation problems. And look, the best thing is that we don't have these fires at all, but we're not paying attention to appropriate mitigation. And there's some, if I'm honest, there's some real partisan feelings on how we treat our forest. And that's the beauty of a commission. They can step away from the politics of it and come back and say, look, based on the facts, this is what should happen for mitigation. And I'm confident we can find some good places there that we can go together as well. And then there's issues where, for instance, once a fire occurs, what responsibility does the local community have? What responsibility does the federal government have? We had a situation a couple of years ago in the big fire down south of my district, southern part of the county of Utah, of the county wanting to do work, but had to get reimbursed from the government before they did the work. And yet, if they didn't do the work, then there would be severe runoff problems. And it was all because the federal government had some laws that said if you do the work before, we'll never reimburse you. And that's just those are the types of things, right, that we should be able to come together on a bipartisan basis and figure out.
Yeah, no question. And you mentioned some of those areas where there are some divides that need to be bridged, some of that in the mitigation space, some of it just in the overall management. You've talked a lot about that in the past in terms of really becoming better partners. It's not that you're trying to say don't do anything, federal government. It's like let's make sure we can manage this in a way. Describe that for us.
Well, I'll tell you I think one of the biggest rubs, and particularly in Utah, is how we manage the timber that falls on the floors of the forest. And there are many who would say you can't disturb that, you can't go in and take that out. And years ago, we had a really robust logging industry that would actually make money from that timber coming out, keep the forest floors clean, and it was a great situation. We stopped doing that, and the fuels accumulated on the forest floors, causing more forest fires. We tried to get it going again, and we'd put all the sawmills out of business. And there was nobody willing to come take the contracts. And if I'm honest, we wrestle a little bit with my colleagues on the other side of the aisle about the fact that we have to treat and manage these forests. You can't just let them go. And, I was in Acadia National Park in the east, up in Maine, this summer, and they have firewood they don't do anything, but it's so moist, they don't have a problem. And so a lot of my colleagues on the East Coast don't understand a dry environment, right? And so we've got to educate them about why it's different, why they don't have a problem here on the East Coast because of the humidity that we have a very severe problem in the West.
Okay, and that's an important bipartisan work that's going on there. And let's go from wildfires in our forest to the fire burning to funding the government. I know you've been in and out of meetings all day. What's the status of the House fire in the House?
It's on fire, and I wish, Boyd, I had good news for your listeners. I don't see this ending well. We have not been able to function as a Republican Party to find consensus. And when we have a very small majority, if we can't find consensus, there's not a lot of options. And so we're headed for the shutdown because we're unable to move forward in a consensus. And the shutdown, I think, will cause us to be in a worse negotiating position than we are today. And I think as conservatives who want to cut the spending in D.C., the shutdown is actually going to increase spending. And if you look through the history of shutdowns, they all end one way, and that's an omnibus bill. And that's the worst possible scenario because that's rapid spending with no accountability. And I'm fearful that's where we're headed.
Yeah, that omnibus always tends to be a little bit of a Mardi Gras of now we have to do this, and so now we're going to throw everything plus the kitchen sink in triplicate in there.
Yeah, and the way they get votes is they go around and say, hey, remember that bridge you wanted? We'll put that in there. And you remember that funding you wanted for this project? We'll put that in there until they have 218 votes. And all of a sudden, in the middle of the night, we're getting a 6,000-page bill that spends all sorts of money. And everybody is feeling so much pain from the shutdown that they plug their nose and it passes. And that's what I'm worried is going to be the outcome of the shutdown.
Yeah. Now, we know on the Senate side that they have at least created a vehicle that could possibly do a short-term, maybe even just a 30-day kind of continuing resolution. Any appetite for that on the House side? Do you see that Speaker McCarthy bringing something like that to the floor with the help of Democrats? What do you sense in that front?
Boyd, a week or so ago, we had a proposal for a continuing resolution that included all of the provisions Republicans wanted at the border. And it would have given us everything we wanted at the border, about another 30 days to solve this. And I have a half a dozen of my colleagues that wouldn't support that. And that gives you the tone for something coming over from the Senate. Well, if they wouldn't support that, where they could get who doesn't want to solve what's happening at the border? And they had that chance and wouldn't take it. And that's when I knew we were in a bad place in trying to get their help and working together as a Republican Party to put a proposal forward.
Yeah. Well, as we roll towards the weekend, is there anything in particular that we should be watching that might give us an indication of, oh, hey, here is a plausible path, or if we're just coming down to the end?
Yes. Yeah, great question. So we're trying to get 4 of the 12 appropriation bills through this week. Those 4 represent over 70% of the whole budget. So it's a big deal. If we're able to do that, we're going to be voting on that here in a couple of hours. That's a good signal to the American people. And there is hope that if we could do that, that the holdouts would join us in a continuing resolution that would buy us enough time to get the rest of those appropriations across the finish line. If they don't, there's no outcome I see other than a shutdown. But at least there's this effort with a plan. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Let's get these 4 passed. Let's see if we can say, hey, it's consensus. There was some good faith in that. Let's buy ourselves a few more days based on the good faith of what we accomplished this week. And we'll know in a couple of hours if we get those 4 bills, those 4 appropriations through. And we'll know probably tomorrow if that means people are willing to say, yeah, we'll give this thing another few days breathing room.
Okay, that's the thing we needed to watch for, and that's what we'll be watching for. We'll continue to follow that. Representative John Curtis on a very busy day in our nation's capital. Again, some important work that really impacts us here in the West. And, of course, the budget fight that impacts us, everyone across the country. Representative Curtis, thanks so much, as always, for making time for us.
Thanks, Boyd. We'll talk later.
So really important in what John Curtis said there in terms of these 4 appropriations bills that they will be voting on in the next hour or so. And that'll really give us the indicator of where this is likely to go over the next 48 hours. If they can get these 4 bills passed, it's over 70% of the budget. It's over 70% of the spending for the government. And it feels like if they can get those 4 appropriations bills passed, then I think you could have a very short-term stopgap continuing resolution that could buy another few days or another couple of weeks to hammer out the rest of an agreement to get the government fully funded, at least till December, and we can do it all over again. But that's really important insight there from Representative John Curtis. So as you hear a lot of the shutdown chatter, be watching over the next few hours to see if these 4 appropriations bills, remember there are 12 total, but these 4 really constitute over 70% of the spending. So it's a big chunk of it. And if they can get that across, then I think there'll be enough good faith to actually move it forward just a little bit. But again, a lot to watch, a lot to be careful of, a lot of political theatrics, I'm sure, is yet to come. We'll continue to follow all of that here on Inside Sources and KSL News Radio. We'll go ahead and step aside for one last break. When we come back, some final thoughts as we look back on the night at Reagan Library, the GOP debate. But we're going to talk about the lessons from Reagan that everybody seemed to ignore last night that might just be the difference between being someone who ran for president and becoming the president. We'll break that down coming up next.
Nothing slows my little girl down, except a stuffy nose. Mommy. That's why I use Sinex Children's Saline from Vicks. Sinex instantly clears mucus in everyday stuffy little noses with a gentle, ultra-fine mist designed for kids. Just Sinex? Breathe. Her stuffy nose is gone for now. And so is she.
Sinex Children's Saline. Sinex, breathe. Use as directed, keep out of reach of children.
I was crossing the street when I met the love of my life. I chased after her. Nothing would stand in my way. Not the dog walker, nor the hot dog vendor. Finally reaching her, I asked, "What do you call that amazing smell?"
It's Gain Flings.
Gain Flings. My love had a name, but more importantly, it had a scent.
Fall in love with Gain Flings. Seriously good scent. Gain Flings with 50% more freshness ingredients versus leading bargain detergent.
As the weather turns colder, this is when you need to get those new windows. So call Advanced Window Products. They'll replace your single-pane, rickety old windows with stylish, state-of-the-art double-pane windows with precision frames. You pick the style and color. They're custom-made right here in Salt Lake City. This company is so Utah. It's run by 2 guys who grew up here, Jake Weber and Utes defensive star Nate Orchard, the mayor of Sacktown with 7 NFL seasons under his belt. Great guys, great company building high-quality windows for 37 years. Unlike other companies, they build the windows, they install the windows, and they guarantee them for life. No middleman. There's Jake, Nate, and their team, and there's you. Saving on the highest quality windows. Right now, before winter, get $2,000 off 10 windows or more, and they offer 60 months, 0% financing. So call Advanced Window Products now. You could have stylish new windows in 8 weeks. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit advancedwindowsusa.com.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the woots. And now a speech.
I just want to say that friendship is about heart and brain. Who's with me?
Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
And my brain is saying, when it's time to go home, somebody call me a ride.
Love that guy.
Me too.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Hey y'all, this is Ronte, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A honey pepper pimento chicken sandwich is the pimento cheese. I was like, go cheese, go pimento, go honey, go get it.
Hi, this is Chantrice, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich is the mild spiciness of the pickled jalapenos. No, it's the crispy chicken. Actually, I can't decide. It's the entire sandwich.
Order the Honey Pepper Pimento Chicken Sandwich on the Chick-fil-A app today. Available for a limited time. Real Chick-fil-A guests paid for their testimonials.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors to tell you about our 10-year everything guarantee. Most contractors spout off having great warranties that last forever. But those warranties are always, and I do mean always, riddled with loopholes, exception, fine print, and nonsense. At RGS Exteriors, we cover everything. Parts, labor, material, everything and anything for 10 full years. There's no cost to you whatsoever. No hoops to jump through, no exceptions. Yes, the products we sell, like James Hardy Siding, our windows, gutter covers, come with a 25 to 50-year manufacturer's warranty, just like everybody else. But the truth is, the products almost never fail. It's always the labor and material which is never covered, so you're stuck paying for service calls. For peace of mind, call RGS Exteriors. You'll sleep easy for 10 full years. 801-280-3110 or visit us at rgsutah.com. That's 801-280-3110 or online rgsutah.com. Gutters, siding, windows, and all exteriors with the 10-year everything guarantee.
The country's largest used RV show is back and better than ever. Come find the biggest used RV selection in years, October 5th through the 7th at the Shops at Southtown. We're bringing in a massive range of used RVs from 6 locations in 3 states for this event. Shop used travel trailers, fifth wheels, motorhomes, toy haulers, and more all on site. Plus, find even more used models online at countriesrvshow.com. You'll find used RV pricing starting as low as $10,000. Along with a huge selection of used RVs, find new RVs straight from the factory already discounted for fall. Plus, all remaining 2023s are at fall show pricing. Strike the best RV deal of the season with no payments until 2024 on approved credit. Not to mention huge trade-in offers on your current RV. And check out our Hunter's Corner just in time to kick off your hunting season. We'll also have consignment RVs at private sale prices backed by dealer support. Don't miss your best chance to extend your fall camping season during the country's largest used RV show. 3 days only, October 5th through the 7th at the Shops at Southtown. Open daily at 10 a.m. with free admission. Sponsored by Bish's RV.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Becky Bruce. First, an attorney for women who say they were victims of a well-known anti-trafficking activist say the accusations against Tim Ballard are true. She did not offer details. Second, President Russell M. Nelson says he will attend this weekend's General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints virtually after suffering a back injury. And third, a new law in California will raise the minimum wage for fast food workers to $20 per hour starting next year. Right now it's sunny, 72 degrees in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It is great to be with you today, as always. I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, we want to come full circle where we began the show today. Of course, a lot of the headlines today have been centered around the Republican Party debate for the nomination for the presidency last night at the historic Ronald Reagan Library in Simi Valley, California. And I have to admit, it was a difficult watch. There was a lot of ugly to it. There was a lot of no good to it. There were a few moments where they actually got to principle and policy, but those were few and far between. And so I want to get past just the top line, the headlines of it all. And earlier in the show, we talked about some of the policy moments that each of the candidates had. They each had at least 1 or 2 moments where they got very serious about good policy and good principles. And sadly, it was interspersed with all kinds of shouting matches and crosstalk and a lot of things that were just a real struggle. And so a couple of things that I want to get to that actually matter, and whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or an independent or anything in between, there are some important lessons here in terms of how we communicate, how we connect, and how we have a different kind of conversation. Clearly, last night was not a model of here's how you have some civil debate or discourse. This was not a model of let's come together, let's talk about our differences, and then let's see who comes out best in the marketplace of ideas. None of that happened. One of the things that I heard way too much of last night was consultants speak. Clearly, the consultants were in Senator Tim Scott's ear that he needed to be much more aggressive. And so aggressive he was, to the point that he sort of got off his own game, which is being the happy warrior. He was in warrior mode last night, forgot the happy for the most part, and it just didn't play that well. Vivek Ramaswamy, the consultants got in his ear and said, you know what, you were a little too angry, a little too smug last time around. So he tried to be a kinder, gentler version of himself, and that didn't play really well because it was not authentic. You also had Governor Ron DeSantis, consultants in his ear. You got to smile at the end of your statements. They were mostly awkward. You have to mention some nice, fluffy kinds of things in the midst of some of the anger and the anti-woke stuff, and we saw a lot of that. And you can go on down the line with the rest of the candidates, and there was a lot of consultant speak in there. That's not helpful. That's what they tell you to do to win a debate. But you're not trying to win a debate. You're trying to become president of the United States. And that's not how you do it. So we heard a lot last night in terms of, who won, who lost, who benefits. There's no doubt in my mind there were two winners last night. Neither of them were in the room. Former President Donald Trump was a big winner last night because as long as the Republican primary continues to be a muddled mess, he continues to just coast along. So that was a win for him. The other winner was President Joe Biden, who continues to struggle with his own polling numbers, his own favorability, his own view by the American people of how he's handling jobs, the economy, inflation, and so on. But he's doing well because the best thing that Joe Biden has going for him is that Donald Trump is leading the Republican primary. And the best thing that the former president has going for him is that Joe Biden is the president, and they're sort of propping each other up. Now, one of the things that I found very interesting, and I predicted this going into it, that the word cloud for the night would be centered around Ronald Reagan. Of course, in that historic building, majestic Air Force One floating above your head there, he was invoked. His name was invoked early and often by the candidates. But the problem is, it's one thing to talk about Ronald Reagan. It's a very different thing to act like him. And I didn't see anybody on that stage who acted like Ronald Reagan. And if I would have been advising any of the candidates last night, I actually would have taken them for a walk around the library before the debate began. And I would take them in the library. There is a case. And in that case, there are thousands of 3x5 and 4x5 cards, handwritten. And I would have shown them that case because that case contains the answer if you not want to win a debate, but you actually want to win and become the president of the United States. So on those cards are written messages that Ronald Reagan delivered in between the time he was governor and the time he became the president. So he was out of office. And what you have to remember is in 1976, the Republican Party found the communicator for the ages in Ronald Reagan. And he lost. He lost. He ran a very anti-establishment, anti-big government, very kind of populist grievance kind of campaign, and he lost. Even though he's one of the great communicators of all time, he lost. Here's the lesson. Between 1976 and mid-1979, every day, Ronald Reagan delivered a 3 to 5 minute radio message that he wrote by himself. He had no staff. He had no research assistants. And he dialed in to the principles and the policies that actually matter to the American people. And he did it day after day after day. It was the hard work and heavy lifting of going from a grievance agenda, this is what I'm against, to having a policy agenda, this is what I'm for, and that's what led to Morning in America in 1980 for President Reagan and the Republican landslide victory. No one on the stage displayed anything even close to being in that zip code. It's all still grievance. So anyone who tuned in last night to watch already knew that everybody on that stage was going to be against the current president, Joe Biden. So they didn't even need to spend time on that because everybody knows that. Anybody watching last night also knew that everybody on that stage was against former President Donald Trump. And so running against things is one thing, and it might get you a nice little social media moment, but it doesn't help you become president of the United States. And so the lesson last night actually was in the Ronald Reagan Library. And if you ever want to learn something fascinating, go and listen to those years. Every day, Ronald Reagan wrote out by hand a message that he delivered to the American people around principles and good policy. That's good for Democrats, Republicans, independents. It's good for all of us. That wraps it up for us on Inside Sources today here on KSL News Radio. I am Boyd Matheson. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, as you go out into the world today, make sure you see something that inspires, say something that uplifts, and do something that makes a difference.
KSL FM Midvale, KSL Salt Lake City. Listen at home on any smart speaker and in your car at 102.7 FM. This is KSL News Radio, Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Good afternoon, 3 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Jeff Kaplan. We're at 73 degrees, bright sunshine. KSL's top story. The leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints says he plans to attend this weekend's General Conference virtually.
President Russell M. Nelson issued a statement on the church website saying he suffered a back injury just 2 days after his 99th birthday, and his doctor wants him to take it easy. In addition, President Nelson writes that the injury makes it difficult for him to spend a long time sitting in a chair. He says he plans to record a message to share. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland also plans to attend virtually as he continues to recover from a recent hospital visit. Becky Bruce, KSL News Radio.
KSL News Time 3:01. Representative John Curtis says on a scale of 1 to 10, he's a 9 about running for Senate.
When I asked Curtis that very question, he laughed and said it was hard to put a number on it. However,
it's up there in the 9 plus region. This is, I'll just say I'm not taking this lightly.
Curtis says he's weighing what's best for him, the state, and his current House district.
Taking the work I've done in the House to a larger platform, I've got to think about that, right? Being able to move forward the work I've done on energy and so many things that are important to our state.
He says the one thing keeping him from running, he knows the Senate job will be a lot of work.
And if that's the only reason, right, that's keeping me from doing it, that's not a good reason not to do it.
Lindsay Aerts, KSL News Radio.
Freshly declared